Please be seated. All right, we can have the jurors brought in, please. All right.
Here's all President Gunner for you, Honor.
Thank you. Please be seated. Okay, we're back on the record after the lunch recess on KCR 2221-1623, State of Idaho versus Chad Guy Daybell. Continuing with cross-examination of Detective Kaya Kamanu. Mr. Pryor, if you'd like to continue with cross, you may. Yes. What's being published there, counsel?
It's the same as before. I think it's the officer's report, exhibit number 14. We're just going through the same as we did previously.
Okay, thank you. Exhibit 14 is
Your Honor.
being published to the jurors. That's okay.
So officer, again, in your report, you noted that these were relevant to your investigation. They're emails from Tammy's email account from someone named Julie Rowe. Is that right?
Yes,
And it looks like the emails are to Tammy. And it says something about support Spring Creek Books com, March 12th, 2019. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay, so if you would be so kind as to just read from Chad down to Julie for me.
Chad, I met with the state president last night and he has requested we stop publishing all my books. I told him I do not have the rights to the books and that my publisher has those rights. He asked me to contact you to request that we stop publishing. He has asked me to copy him on this email and send him your reply. Yep. He also said he is going to contact your state president, Julie.
Okay. So do you know what a stake president is?
I believe the state president is over the stake of a ward, of the wards.
Okay, and is that, and I'm not familiar with this, but does that mean there's a number of wards or groups that are like neighborhoods? And the stake president overlooks a number of these wards? Is that what it is?
From my understanding, yes.
Okay, do you know who the stake president was in this email?
I do not.
But it appears that they're telling Julie Rowe. You know who Julie Rowe is?
Throughout the investigation, her name came up and also known as a publisher or a book writer.
Right. And she was someone who put on presentations all over the Arizona, Utah, Idaho area about preparedness issues, right?
Yes.
And she published books about that as well, right?
Yes.
And is there anything in the indication of your review of the emails why a stake president would inject himself into the publishing of books?
I'm not sure on that.
And then and again, told Julie Rowe that her stake president is going to contact Chad's stake president,
Correct.
right? Correct?
Correct.
Okay. But there's nothing in the other emails that you had to show why a couple of stake presidents would interfere with Chad Daybell publishing his books?
I do not.
Okay. All right. Thank you. The next one we're talking about is from Tammy to Mark, and Mark again is Tammy's son, Mark, right?
Yes.
That's the youngest son, if I remember right.
Yes.
And the date of this email is March 31st of 2019, correct?
Yes.
And it's Tammy writing to her son, Mark. And I'll read. I've got Dad and Garth doing a C2 5K, and then in parentheses, couch to 5K. So I would you interpret that to mean that the C would mean couch and the number 2 would mean 2, like TO to 5K? Is that how you would interpret that?
Yes.
And if I understand that correctly, what that would mean is that you're starting from the very beginning of your training and you may be a couch potato, right?
You could say that. Yes.
Yeah. And you're starting from the very start of something and you're going to try to do a 5K, right?
Yes.
And it says with me, right?
Yes.
So that would imply on March 31st of 2019, we had 3 couch potatoes at the Daybell house.
Objection, Your Honor. Calls for speculation and misstates the email.
Sustained.
How do you interpret that?
That they just wanted to start working out and getting into shape.
Okay, from couch potato to 5K, right?
Objection, Your Honor. Again, misstates the evidence. Counsel's testifying. Move to strike.
Sustained, stricken.
Okay. Then it goes on to say, we've done the first week twice because quite frankly, I didn't feel ready to move on to the second week. But it should be good for us. Okay, good for me. I have to say, I admire you for running track. Starting from nothing is not easy. Now, when you see the term starting from nothing is not easy, it's not particular whether we're talking about Tammy starting from nothing or whether it's Mark starting from nothing, right?
Correct.
It's unclear there, correct?
Correct.
But then you put in there not the full email. is there further explanation in there that maybe explains who we're talking about, who's starting from nothing on this couch potato issue?
No, there is not.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you for that. And then we'll move on. And it's from Tammy to Mark again on April 14th, 2019. I tripped over the duck gate on Saturday and landed hard on my right hand. And the bucket of eggs I was carrying, it hurt so bad, I just lay in the driveway and cried. Then I got up, cleaned up the egg mess with my left hand and went in the house to find Dad. Luckily, I seem to have only bruised it. Of course, Dad blessed it, so it may have been worse. Okay? And there's nothing, what's the evidentiary issue of this?
So during the, during the investigation, it was said that Tammy had a hurt wrist
Right.
and that she was taking medication for it. So this goes back to, instead of a possible fainting spell, she had tripped over the duck gate and
Okay.
fell and hurt her wrist. So that was relevant to me putting this in my report.
Okay, thank you. And again, that's not the full email that you provided to us today, right?
It was not.
Okay, and was there any further explanation that as to what caused Tammy to trip?
She tripped over a bucket.
Okay, did she trip because she had a dizzy spell? Did she trip because she had a seizure?
Well, this says I tripped over a duck gate. So she
Okay.
had tripped over a duck gate, causing her to fall.
Okay, so we don't know if it was just she ran into the duck gate or she had some sort of medical condition that caused her to trip over the duck gate though, right?
Objection, Your Honor. Calls for speculation. The email speaks for itself and asked and answered.
Sustained.
You don't know all of the facts behind what centered around the reason for the trip over the duck gate. Would that be fair?
Objection, Your Honor. Calls for speculation. Again, the message speaks for itself.
I'm not asking for him to speculate. I'm just asking whether it was explained, Judge.
Overruled.
In this email, I would just take it as she tripped over something.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Thank you. And then lastly, from Tammy to Mark on April 28th, Dad is in Houston and won't be back until Monday night. So you'll just have to get to talk to me tomorrow. And what's the significance of that?
So on this one, this correlates with some of our other records showing that Chad was in Houston, and that Tammy was home alone.
Okay. Next one was something about, oops. And I don't see. Something that identifies the date, but it was something about a zone conference. Do you know what that was about?
I am not sure on that.
Okay. And then does it seem like your tapeworm medicine worked? Who's talking to who there? Do you know?
I would believe Tammy is emailing and talking with Mark on this one.
Okay. So it's Tammy who's suggesting that there was some tapeworm incident. She was having some sort of malady.
Correct. This might be a continuation of the page before.
Okay.
Possibly.
And the page before would have been this malady with the tapeworm would have been on the 28th of 2019. Would that be fair?
Correct. Yes.
Thank you for clearing that up. Okay. And then she goes on, I guess I should ask you, is that Tammy who said, I haven't slept well since Dad has been gone. I'm hoping to sleep well tonight.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Then we're going to June 30th of 2019. Is that right?
Yes.
And then let me read this and then I'll talk to you a little bit about that. Another adventure we had this week involves a raccoon. Last year we had skunks. This year a raccoon. We thought stray cats were getting into the cat food, but nope. Garth saw it one night and it was a raccoon. We borrowed a little trap from Matt Price, but when Garth went out to check it that night, the raccoon ran up the tree by the trap. It was huge. No way it was going to fit in the trap. It was larger than Chase and had really long teeth. Garth kept his flashlight on it and called us in the house. Dad got his gun. He shot it out of the tree, then shot it again as it tried to run across the yard. We now have a raccoon buried in the compost heap. Something else got into a cat food a couple of nights ago, so we borrowed a larger trap from Matt. We didn't catch anything last night, so we'll see if we get anything tonight. If we do catch anything, Matt asked us not to shoot it because he has a friend who will use whatever we catch to train dogs. Joel is, I think that's Nickel, told me they've got a couple of raccoons and skunks they've been trying to trap, and some coyotes have been eating chickens at houses over by Jordan Graham's house. In all, it's been a crazy year with wildlife. Do you see that?
Yes,
And could you identify the date when they're having this crazy year with wildlife?
June 30th, 2019.
Okay, and the allegation with Chad Daybell is that there was an email that the prosecutor has alleged may have a different meaning, but that was September 30th of 2019, correct? September of 2019, I'm sorry.
I guess I'm unaware of what email you're referring
Okay.
to.
Well, would it be fair that the allegations are that they discovered JJ and Tylee's body and that they are presuming as part of your investigation that they were buried in Mr. Daybell's property in September of 2019?
Yes,
Okay, and there was some email by Chad Daybell that made mention of a raccoon. You recall that?
Objection, Your Honor, misstates the evidence.
Abstain.
So from what I gather, the allegations about the children being buried on Chad Daybell's property was the same year as this email as well, correct?
yes,
And we're on June 30th of 2019. And the allegations against Mr. Daybell relate to around September, sometime in September of 2019, correct?
yes,
So 2.5, 3 months later, there's at least two references about raccoons. Would that be fair?
yes.
Okay. And there's a reference that they buried this raccoon in a compost heap. Where's the compost heap on Mr. Daybell's property? Do you know?
I'm not sure about
Okay.
that.
All right. And then we go on to July 7th of 2019, right?
Yes,
Here is the second raccoon. The first one was shot. Garth said this one is smaller than the first one. I like how the kittens are looking at him too. Okay, and that's from March 7th. And that's also relating to this raccoon issue. Would that be fair?
yes,
Okay. And then we have a picture. Dad has lost a lot of weight. He just doesn't seem to eat much anymore, and he is exercising. You see that, right?
yes.
But above that is a trap. Can you explain, does that look like a trap?
Yes,
And somewhere in the back top of the picture, it looks like there's some sort of raccoon in it. Is that what you see?
that's what I'm trying to see. I
Okay.
see the kittens there.
I do. Okay. And the previous motions made mention of Tammy saying, here's a picture of the second raccoon. It's a smaller one. So
Would you like me to point it out?
you did find it? Go ahead if you.
So it's kind of hard to tell. The raccoon is right there.
Okay. Is it, officer, is that raccoon in the trap?
I believe so.
Okay. Okay. Then we go down and we have a picture of Chad and Tammy, right?
Yes,
And again, not the full email, but your perception is that there's nothing there that was relevant to this investigation, right?
yes,
Okay, and then does that appear to be the side of the house?
appears to be the back of the house, I believe.
Okay. Okay. And from the email, that would be a picture of July 7th of 2019?
I'd have to look at the First page. Yes.
Okay, thank you. August 4th of 2019. Dad is in Arizona. He's speaking to a small group on Sunday night. And at a girls' camp on Monday night, he flies home on Tuesday, right?
Yes.
And that had reference to the August 4th meeting with Melanie Gibb and Lori Vallow and all of the ladies who met Sunday at a girls' meeting at Lori Vallow's house. Is that what that was about?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, okay. But that's not the full email, but again, you determined there wasn't any relevance to anything else. Would that be fair?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Then we go on again, and we talk about from Tammy to Mark, again, Tammy Daybell to Mark on September 15th of 2019, right?
Yes.
And this was about a month before Tammy passed away. Would that be fair?
Close to. Yes.
Okay. And she says, this was taken on Saturday. Joe planted potatoes in his garden. I had been sick in bed all day with a really bad cold. But I put on a hat and went over to pose for this picture, so it looks like I'm really a real Idahoan. But I went right back to bed after we took it. I'm still sick today, and my nose won't stop running. I will go to work tomorrow, though, because I am helping with testing, and getting sub work would be more trouble than it was worth, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then there's some mention of continue whining. I burned my arm today when taking some rolls out of the oven, right?
Yes.
And the relevance of this is that it was just mentioning that 3 weeks before 3 weeks before Tammy passed away, she was sick for one day and basically was sick the entire next day and just got up and made herself put on a good face and made herself and go back to work, right?
Yeah.
Objection, Your Honor. Counsel's testifying. I don't hear a question there.
Abstain.
She wasn't feeling well that day, right?
Correct.
It appears that she was sick the following day, right?
Yes.
She spent a significant amount of time in bed,
Yes.
and she put on the courage to go to work on Monday, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then the one, your mom came to visit us Friday night and Saturday morning. Under orders from Grandma Cooper, I'll let her tell the story. I'm not, what's the relevance of that? Okay, and this again touches on, I think we talked about this previously about the Wednesday during the day with Reagan Price and the person who took her dog, and that leads into what we originally started with. Would that be fair?
Yes,
Okay. Okay. And then there's one final email that talks about Matt Price sending audiobooks for Tammy to listen to, right?
yes.
And that was for her trip?
Tammy sent those, I believe, to Matt Price with codes to get into the audio book.
That's right. I'm sorry. You're right. Okay, thank you. And if I could just have a minute, Judge, thank you.
You may.
One last area, on the, day that you got the call about Tammy's death, uh, you, received a call from who again? I'm sorry?
I missed a call from Deputy Greenhalgh.
Okay. But then you said something about you followed up with it later and did have a discussion, or my notes not accurately reflecting?
So I missed that call and called her back about an hour and a half later
Okay.
and spoke with her on that. Yes.
And then she recited the facts about what she observed. Is that right?
She informed me that she was on an unattended death. I went through and asked her if there's anything out of the ordinary, anything suspicious, and she told me there was not.
Okay. So according to Officer Greenell, there was nothing suspicious. Is that right?
That's what she told me. Yes.
Okay. And then according to, did you have a chance to look at Brenda Dye's report as a result of this investigation?
Not the AG's report. No, that
I'm not talking the AG's report. I'm talking about Brenda Dye's diagram and report about this unattended death.
I did not.
Okay. So from your perspective, when Officer Greenall contacted you and advised that there was nothing suspicious about the death, at that point, it did not require you to take any further action. Would that be fair?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Judge, that's all I have. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Oh, you're right. Oh, my goodness. Be able to make it without you. Mhm.
All right, redirect.
Thank you, Your Honor. We're gonna, I'm gonna start a little backwards here and start with that last exhibit. You were shown some emails that you'd reviewed in the last exhibit by defense counsel. And there was some indication in there about people being light and dark. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Through your investigation, did you learn who it was that would label people as light or dark?
Chad Daybell.
You were also shown an email about Chad needing to do some work on Mark's camera. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And the indication was Chad was the one that had to do that work, correct?
Yes.
And I think specifically it referenced the camera was cursed.
Yes.
Mark wasn't at the Daybell residence. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Mark was on his mission.
Yes.
It was brought up that Chad had labeled some 12-year-olds as dark. Do you recall that?
Yes.
You were asked if those kids are still alive to the best of your knowledge. Are they?
The best of my knowledge, yes. I hope so.
Were those Lori's minor children?
No.
Were they obstacles to Chad and Lori being together?
No.
There was also an email on March 31st of 2019 where Tammy was talking about getting ready for a 5K. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Did that indicate to you that Tammy was active?
It's hard to say. Active, working out, you do different things, right? And trying to stay in shape, you do different things. Some people may run to stay in shape. Some people may go lift weights to stay in shape. So that may just have been something different she wanted to try.
Did it indicate to you that Tammy had a desire to at least do something to be active?
Yes.
Then you were shown an email that Tammy sent to Mark on April 28th of 2019 about Chad being in Houston.
Yes.
And can you remind us what the significance of that was?
The significance with that was we have information that Chad had gone there with Lori. And her emailing Mark saying that Chad's in Houston just kind of confirmed that.
And later on in that same email, we see Tammy say, I haven't slept well since dad has been gone. Do you recall that?
Yes.
So Tammy indicated she wasn't sleeping well and Chad was in Houston with Lori.
Yes.
Then the next one, there's a couple texts about a raccoon. Do you recall, or not texts, excuse me, a couple emails about a raccoon.
Yes.
And the first one is on June 30th of 2019, correct?
Yes.
And in that one, there's mention of having a flashlight.
Yes.
Did it appear that the raccoon was shot at night?
Yes.
Then we see another email on July 7th of 2019 with a image of a raccoon in a trap, correct?
Yes.
Do you recall ever seeing an email from Tammy to Mark about a raccoon in September of 2019?
I did not.
So Tammy emailed Mark twice about seeing a raccoon, but no messages in September of 2019 to Mark that you recall.
Not on this email, no.
Then you were asked about the message from Tammy to Mark on August 4th of 2019 about Chad being in Arizona. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And in the message, Tammy indicates that Chad is at a girls' camp.
Yes.
Was he at a girls' camp?
He was at a conference, I believe, at Melanie's, or correction, Lori's house.
So again, he was with Lori on August 4th of 2019.
Yes,
Do you recall when Charles Vallow was killed?
July 11, 2019.
There was an email also shown that was from Tammy to Mark on September 15th of 2019, where Tammy references having a cold. Do you recall that?
Yes,
And Tammy indicated she was in bed for a few days.
yes,
And that was in September.
yes,
Any similar email message to Mark in October about Tammy being sick?
no,
Then you're asked about some messages on October 6th, one from Ron Douglas to Mark and one from Tammy to Mark about Tammy visiting Springville, Utah. Do you recall those?
yes,
Through your investigation, did you learn anything about Tammy having a medical concern that kept her from driving?
no,
Through your investigation, did you learn who encouraged her to go to Springville that weekend?
yes,
And who was that?
Chad Daybell.
And circling back, Detective, do you recall the email, you've been shown it by both myself and defense counsel, that was from Tammy to Mark about the attempted shooting?
Yes,
And you were asked some questions about Regan Price and Tammy mentioning some things Regan had shared with her about a lady trying to steal Regan's dog. Do you recall that?
yes,
Regan described a lady trying to steal her dog, correct?
yes,
Did Regan ever mention the lady having a firearm?
no,
Did Regan ever mention the lady being dressed all in black?
no,
You were asked quite a bit about the Daybell's driveway. How many driveways are at the Daybell residence?
2,
And you were asked about a longer driveway. Would you consider that the front or back driveway or side driveway?
the back driveway is a very longer driveway compared to the front driveway.
And Your Honor, I'm going to ask to be handed States Exhibit 291.
Very well.
And Your Honor, may I publish?
You may.
And we've looked at this exhibit a couple times, but in that second paragraph, can you see which driveway Tammy came into that day?
She backed into the front driveway.
Is the front driveway that long?
It's, like I discussed earlier, about 2 car lengths.
And then is there a driveway that's even longer than that?
Yes,
And how long is the other driveway car lengths, if you could estimate? Message, put it back up. In that second paragraph, do you see an indication of what time of day this occurred?
9:15.
And that would be referring to PM.
Yes, that's when the call came in around that time.
And again, you're from the Fremont County area. Correct?
Yes,
And October's in Fremont County, about 9 PM. Is it still light out generally?
it's usually getting about dusk.
Do you recall reviewing? Let me back up. Would it surprise you to learn that there was no report by Deputy Cannon where he referenced having searched for paintball guns with Tammy Daybell?
Would it surprise me that there was no search with
That-
that?
That there was no Google search done for paintball guns?
Overruled.
No.
If Deputy Cannon had indicated that he never searched for paintball guns with Tammy Daybell, would you have any reason to dispute that?
No.
I think we talked about this a little bit earlier, but do you know how familiar Tammy Daybell was with firearms?
I do not know how familiar she was with them.
And council talked about some searches that were done by an email associated with Tammy Daybell regarding a paintball gun and an airsoft gun. Do you recall those?
Yes,
From your review of the October 9th investigation, did Tammy Daybell ever produce any photo saying this is the firearm?
no, she did not.
And yet she didn't do any search for a rifle, did she? That you're aware of?
No,
Are there various type of paintball guns in your experience?
yes,
Your Honor, I'm going to ask to have the witness shown States Exhibit 282.
And Judge, I believe this is the image that we stipulated to council. Is that correct?
It is, Your Honor, and I do have a courtesy copy for defense counsel that's now been marked, a courtesy copy for Your Honor and a copy for the court.
All right, thank you, counsel.
Thank you.
And Detective, have you seen this image before?
yes,
And that top image there, is that the Grendel 6.5 that we've earlier referenced?
yes, it is.
And Your Honor, I would move for the admission of States Exhibit 282.
Again, Judge, that was by stipulation of the parties, so
All
I
right,
am not having an objection to it.
very well. Without objection, Exhibit 282 is admitted.
And Your Honor, I would ask permission to publish.
You may.
And Detective Counsel showed you an image of one type of paintball gun. Do you recall that?
Yes,
And that is just one type?
yes,
And you'd indicated that they make paintball guns that look similar to an assault rifle.
yes,
And again, that top image is the firearm that was seized from an apartment associated with Alex Cox. Is that correct?
yes,
And the bottom one, it's marked example. To be clear, this firearm was never located. Is that correct?
that is correct. This was not located.
Can you tell us what we're seeing in that bottom photo?
So this bottom photo right here is a Tipman paintball gun with the Tipman. Yeah. On the top is a hopper. On the back has a collapsible stock. And then your barrel.
And Your Honor, the state would ask to publish State's Exhibit 281C that's already been admitted. If
You
I
may
could be
publish.
handed that. And Detective, this is a close-up, again, of the front part of that Grendel 6.5. Is that correct?
Yes,
And if the firearm was pointing at someone, this may be a vantage point of what they see.
yes,
And Detective, again, Alex was in the area of the Daybell residence earlier in the day on October 9th. Is that correct?
yes,
And then he was also in the area about 2.6 miles away the night before Tammy was pronounced dead. Is that correct?
yes,
And counsel talked to you about whooshing and popping sounds from paintball guns. If a gun misfires, will it make a sound?
it depends what kind of misfire or jam it may have.
Are there various sounds that would the sound of a AR be muffled or different if it had a silencer on it?
Yes,
And counsel talked to you about Tammy being pretty close to the gun. She describes the gun as right behind her and she turns around and he's there, correct?
correct,
And we talked earlier about some searches done on the Homer J. Maximus account about a drop.
yes,
If you're sighting your gun, and correct me if I'm using the wrong language here, if you're sighting a gun or trying to adjust it to fire a certain distance, is that different if it's a short distance versus a long distance?
yes,
So if you'd been further away and moved closer, would it be sighted in different?
yes, could be.
And counsel talked to you about the bipolar teenager mentioned in the email from Tammy to Mark, correct?
Yes,
Again, reports of a bipolar teenager pointing a paintball gun at anyone?
no, not that I'm aware of.
Any reports of someone other than Tammy Daybell? Any reports of anyone else coming face to face with a masked gunman?
No, not that I'm aware of.
And do you, trying to make sure I'm referencing the correct exhibit? And Your Honor, may I have State's Exhibit 291 again, please?
Yes.
And may I also have Defense Exhibit 16? Yes, it is State's Exhibit 291 and Defense Exhibit 16. And I guess while I'm at it, I forget the exhibit number, but the second call into dispatch by Tammy Daybell.
Thirty-two B.
232B, Your Honor. And Your Honor, may I have permission to publish Defense Exhibit 16?
Yes.
Your Honor, defense screen just went blank. Oh, sorry, it popped up.
The HDMI does not like my computer.
Judge, if the court would prefer to take a short break now and we could do the early afternoon break.
Well, I think we'll get this sorted out pretty quickly here.
Detective, can I have you look at that first sentence there? And can you read it into the record?
Something really weird just happened, and I want you to know so you can watch out.
Tammy's sending this message out, telling people she wants them to watch out, correct?
Yes.
And Judge, I would now ask to be able to display States Exhibit 291.
You may.
And at the end of that first big paragraph, do you see where Tammy indicates the scared part came after when my brain thought of other things that could have happened?
Yes.
And on this one, do you see at the end of that full paragraph where she says, I didn't go to Zumba because I quite understandably did not want to be out after dark alone?
Yes.
Do those statements indicate someone that was scared by what just happened?
Yes.
And in this one, do you see in that first paragraph where it says the guy started pulling the trigger and I could just hear the clicking and whooshing sound of an empty paintball gun?
Yes,
He was standing by the back of the car, just pulling the trigger while pointing the gun at me. Do you see that?
yes,
Does this indicate more than someone just pointing a gun at someone?
yes, it does.
And do you recall in the dispatch call with Tammy where she talks about the man pointing the gun at her and just shooting? And we can listen to it again. Would that be helpful?
Yeah, I don't recall that.
And Your Honor, may I publish States Exhibit 232B?
Yes.
Forty-nine minutes, 20 seconds.
It's Fremont County Sheriff's Office. Hi, I need to report something. Okay, go ahead. What's the address? Okay, at 202 North, 1900 East, the corner with the blinking yellow light on Salem Highway. Is it a suspicious person? Yes. Okay, what was he wearing? He was all dressed in black and he had a ski mask on. And he said the blinking light now is where you saw him? No, he's gone now because I pulled up into our driveway and I was getting stuff out of the back seat of my car and suddenly he was there and he had a paintball gun and he was and he was going to shoot at me. And I kept asking him what he was doing because I could tell it was a paintball thing. And then he just kept doing it. So I yelled for my husband and then he took off running around the back of my house. Okay, give me just 1 minute. Stay on the line with me. Okay.
October 9, 2019, 21 hours, 50 minutes, 28 seconds.
And that was North 1900 East? Yes. Okay.
October 9, 2019, 21 hours, 50 minutes, 43 seconds.
Do you know what direction he was going? He went behind my house and it's so dark out there and I went in the house and got my husband and son and then they went out and looked and he was long gone by then. So he was on the north side of my house is where he went to get away. Okay. He didn't say anything or he just kept like he was holding the gun like he was, had a rifle and just shooting at me. So. But nothing came out of the gun either, so I don't think it was loaded. Okay, what is your name? My name is Tammy Daybell.
And I'm going to stop it right there. Did you hear on there where she says holding the gun like he had a rifle and shooting at me, but nothing came out?
Yes, I did.
Does that indicate more than someone just pointing a gun?
Yes, it does.
And counsel talked to you a little bit about some of those searches associated with Homer J. Maximus. Do you recall that?
Yes,
And he talked to you about October being hunting season.
Yes,
Would shooting through a windshield or shooting through a Dodge Dakota generally have anything to do with hunting?
no,
Through the investigation, did you become aware that Chad had deemed Alex to be Lori's protector?
yes, I did.
After Alex shot Charles on July 11th of 2019, did Chad and Lori maintain a relationship to the best of your knowledge?
Yes, I did.
In fact, we saw in an email, and I think you referenced it, Chad was down there on August 4th, 2019, just maybe about 3 weeks after Charles was shot and killed by Alex Cox.
Yes, he was.
Would that lead you to believe that Chad was scared of Alex Cox?
No,
Lead you to believe Chad was scared of Lori Vallow?
no,
Are you aware of any report taken by Fremont County where Chad Daybell reported that he was scared of anyone?
no, I am not aware.
Are you aware of Chad ever reporting anyone tried to shoot at him?
No,
And again, through the investigation, what was the connection between Alex Cox and Tammy Daybell?
Chad Daybell.
I have no further questions.
All right, thank you, Ms. Blake.
Judge, I would like an opportunity to clarify the driveway. And then counsel went on about um, the relationship between Alex and Chad Daybell, and I'd like an opportunity to at least touch on that.
I'll allow some limited recross on those two issues,
Judge.
Mr. Pryor.
Officer counsel,
The Facebook, I don't recall if that said the front driveway.
Judge, can
No, in the email. Sorry.
that's okay. I'm gonna have to have permission to go get my computer, Judge, and bring my computer.
Yes.
Thank you. My turn now. I'm not ready yet, Judge. I think I'm ready now, Judge.
All right. You can publish that.
Okay, and I apologize. I can't get this to widen on me, Judge, but officer, can you read that if you look at your monitor?
Yes, I can, and it does say the front drive.
Okay, and I'm sorry we had to go through that with all that time, but I wanted to make sure. And Judge, that's all I have for this.
Okay, thank you.
So there is no dispute that this was the front driveway, correct?
Correct.
And again, the front driveway is a very short driveway compared to the one in the back, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and further, the distance between the front of the house and where the car was backed up, that even shortens the distance even more, correct?
Yes.
And it would be unusual to use a rifle at such close range, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, that's not a weapon that you use at close range, correct?
Usually not.
In fact, a rifle is typically used when we're talking about hunting. That's long range, which is consistent with Mr. Cox talking about 100 and 300-yard shots, right?
Sometimes.
And in your experience, if you're really trying to hurt somebody at close range, you would probably use a handgun or a shotgun, right?
Well, I guess I misstated right there.
Okay.
Rifles can be used at close range, close
Okay.
quarter combats,
Okay.
SWAT stuff. So
Okay.
yes, they can be used.
Okay. Now, the information you got about the Dodge Dakota, you recall that, right?
Yes.
And you talked about the fact that someone was talking about putting a bullet through the window of a Dodge Dakota.
Yes.
Someone trying to figure out what type of bullet it would take to pierce the side of a Dodge Dakota.
Yes.
Someone who would take what kind of a bullet would pierce the metal or the thickness of the metal on a Dodge Dakota.
Yes.
So it would seem with Mr. Daybell owning a Dodge Dakota that it seems that at least the target was someone in the Daybell family. Would that be fair?
That'd be fair to say, yes.
Okay. And with the Homer J. Maximus account, is there any indication that Chad was shared all of the information on Alex Cox's Homer J. Maximus account?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation.
Sustain.
Do you have any information to suggest that Mr. Daybell had access to the Homer J. Maximus account?
No, I do not.
Okay. So if Mr. Daybell didn't have access to the information in that account, do you have any other information that Mr. Daybell had knowledge that Alex Cox was looking for a way to shoot a Dodge Dakota that Mr. Daybell owned?
No.
Okay. Nothing else, Judge. Thank you.
All right, that will conclude then the testimony of Detective Kaya Kamanu. And he's testified twice now. Is he still, well, he's the case agent, so I don't know if he'll be recalled or not, but Detective, you can go ahead and step down from the witness stand. We'll make sure to retrieve exhibits. I'll have a brief sidebar with counsel to discuss scheduling for today, and we'll take our afternoon recess at this time.
Okay, we're gonna take a break, so we'll finish up that Nancy Grace piece we were watching. So if I can find the tab.
not criminal masterminds. They had a previous murder plan that didn't pan out. Then they go into this elaborate plan but they leave a trail a mile wide for police investigators to follow. Nancy, I've never seen anything like this. They might as well have written it and signed it and sent it to the police.
You know, I'm very, earlier, I think we heard Cheryl McCollum compared it to Wile E. Coyote, their plot. And I admonished her because we've got 2 dead moms. But actually, it does sound like something out of the Apple Dumpling Gang, except nobody ever died in those movies, where they've been watching way too many movies with the burner phones and the rendezvous point and the bull. I mean, how much more obvious can it be, or Brant, that to rent a bulldozer or to bring over your bulldozer?
Yes.
Full explanation for their line of thinking. This is just not, it's like trying to, I don't know where these people came up with their ideas when they started researching it online.
All. They have been fighting for almost a decade over those children, and they were attacked. I'm going to say it again. This didn't take 4 people. This was a deliberate gang ambush.
Guys, you're seeing the lonely stretch of road where these murders took place. Killer granny suspects, bloody ambush on 2 unarmed Kansas moms on their way to a children's birthday party, and they apparently used tasers, burner phones, even a bulldozer to affect their plan. Joining me in all-star panel, you were just hearing Cheryl McCollum, but now to Lauren Conlon, investigative journalist, host of the Outlier podcast. I want to hear what you have to say about the use of a hammer as the murder weapon, but also I found something buried in the affidavit. We find out that 3 prepaid cellular phones were purchased from Walmart in Oklahoma back on Feb 13. That's how long they've been planning this, since Feb 13. This is what I found really interesting. All 3 of the burner phones were powered on and accessed cellular network for the first time at Cullum's residence. So they can, the LE law enforcement can identify the first time these idiots turned on the burner phone is basically inside their own home. Ding dong. They couldn't figure out that they are leaving a digital trail. They're turning on the cellular phones that were used to orchestrate this double murder. They turn it on for the first time in or near their own home. I mean, they need to go back and watch Ocean's 11 all over again. Lauren Collin, you were jumping in. What were you saying?
Well, I can provide some context to this as well, because while they appear to be extremely dumb criminals, obviously, I think there's an element to this, right? The farm element. I don't think that it's out of the ordinary that he would rent farm equipment or dig holes, XYZ. But using your own cell phones and turning these cell phones, these burner phones on at your own house, this goes to the fact that Tiffany Adams is actually very connected in that town. She runs and is responsible for the Cimarron County GOP. She's their chair. She was a former school board chair. She knows the sheriff's office. I mean, I think there was a quote where she had said, I know the path the judge takes to work. She knows everybody. And I believe that she thinks that she is untouchable. And people don't necessarily want to talk to us. The one judge that did speak to us, he was forced to resign the next day. So it's really interesting. And I think that this woman in particular, Tiffany Adams, she holds a type of power that we are just going to be learning about.
You know what that calls for? A change of venue. That won't be hard. I'm still looking very carefully at this affidavit. Fill back in and covered with hay. I mean, you could probably see that with a drive over from a helicopter, for Pete's sake. Did they not think cops were going to find that? I mean, Irv Brandt, I've seen many, many homicides. I've investigated many, tried many, covered many, but this is a plethora, a Pandora's box of evidence.
Nancy, that's exactly right. Like you, I've been doing this all my adult life, and I have never seen a case probably easier to solve, easier to prove. When we take it to you as the prosecuting attorney, you'd look at us and say, "You got to be kidding me!" I can't believe this. Did they videotape themselves committing the crime? Did they post it on social media? They did just about everything else imaginable, to say they did it. The confessions got to be forthcoming, I would imagine, to the police.
Joining me, high-profile lawyer, very familiar with the case. Kelly, I want you to take a listen to this.
The motive, according to investigators, is custody of Butler's two children. A custody battle has gone on for more than 5 years. Father Wrangler Rickman, Tiffany Adams' son, was awarded custody of the children, but Rickman was confirmed to be in a rehabilitation facility in Oklahoma City at the time of the murders. Veronica Butler's custody arrangement allowed her supervised visitation with her children. Reportedly, according to Butler's attorney, she was likely to be granted unsupervised visitation during an upcoming hearing. For Butler.
And isn't it true, guys, who are talking about Adams, we're talking about Tiffany Michelle Adams, age 54, who political boss of the county, going down because of her own actions. And it's seemingly straight back out to Lauren Collin or anybody. Cheryl McCollum, you may know the answer to this.
With IXL, there's an endless number of skills that match
She's
Yes, jump in.
tell it on herself. She has told on herself, I think, for the last 9 years. I think there's probably been threats all over creation. And let me tell you the most striking thing for me, the ex-mother-in-law, she has made that clear. Veronica's no good for the children. They're not safe with her. She probably doesn't cook and clean. She doesn't take care of them. They're only, okay, not meat. Pick the children up, especially on the daughter's birthday. Remember, it was her birthday. She would have been the first person, Tiffany would have been the first person calling the court saying, she's in contempt. I told y'all she was no good. I've got these children sitting here crying because their mama didn't show up. Is this baby's birthday? When she didn't do that, she didn't make that call pitching a fit. That told me right there, she's involved.
Is nobody worried about discussion of killing a judge pops up in the affidavit? Because I'm looking right at it, that we don't have to worry about custody anymore because Adams, that would be the mother-in-law, Tiffany Adams, quote, knew the path the judge walked. I mean, Cheryl McCollum, am I the only one seeing that? Were they going to kill a judge too?
It is telling you the lengths that she was going to go to, Nancy. Nothing was going to stop her from keeping those children away from Veronica. She was going to have every possible avenue stopped so that she could have these children. Nancy, she's supposedly so connected to the courts and to the police, but she has refused to go by any of the court's order. They've basically made her bulletproof. For years, she has stopped the mama from seeing them. For years, she has refused to do what the court tells her to do. And when it looked to her that she could no longer control the court or the victim, she killed her. That's how it looks, plain and simple.
There is the death penalty in Oklahoma. Kelly Hyman, there have to be special aggravating circumstance. Those have to be clearly enunciated far prior to trial in writing. There has to be an announcement the state is going to seek the death penalty. And there is a very limited number of aggravating circumstances that will suffice. However, more than one body is one of those aggravating circumstances.
Ultimately, that will be up to the state to make a determination on whether they believe that they can bring it. There is a lot of evidence that is coming out. And Nancy, to your point about the alleged about the judge, it is very, very disconcerting because judges are the ones that preside over the case, and they're the ones that make determinations. And so the fact that there is allegations of harming a judge, which is very disconcerting and very upsetting. But ultimately, no one, no matter who you are, is above the law, and people need to be held accountable. And ultimately, that will be up to the jury of whether they're innocent or guilty in this case.
To Irv Brandt joining us, former U.S. Marshal Service and author. Irv, to think all of this was over what, every other weekend, or Wednesday to Saturday versus Thursday to Saturday visitations, and the so-called evil mother-in-law, evil granny killer suspect. She's every time he had visitation or shared custody. So if he got the children half the time, she would have access to the children half of their lives. And in a divorce, for a lot of people, that's pretty good visitation. And all of this over what, a few days a month?
Nancy, I don't think the time had anything to do with it. I think to this woman, this was obviously about control, and she wanted complete control of who was going to see those children and when they were going to see those children and what the circumstances were going to be. And she wasn't even going to allow a judge to dictate to her how to take care of these children, because she said it. She'll take that judge out. She knows his path to the courthouse. So no, Nancy, it makes no sense other than the fact that the woman wanted complete control over every action concerning those children.
To Dr. Kendall Crowns, your theory that a hammer was used to bludgeon the women dead, most likely about the face and the head. The pain they would have endured preceding their death would have been unbearable.
Correct. I mean, if she's being tased or shocked with the electronic devices or electric devices, then being beaten with a hammer. Hammer isn't really efficient to kill someone because it's hard to break the skull with a hammer. So they would have to continually strike them multiple times, eventually fracturing the head, and then getting into the brain cavity. The other thing you have to consider is the fact that they could have been hit with a hammer, knocked unconscious, and then placed into the grave and then covered with the dirt, still being alive but unconscious. Ways of
a medical examination of their lungs determine if they were buried alive, their lungs, their nasal passages, and their mouths.
Their mouths and their nose could have inhaling the dirt. It wouldn't probably get as deep as the lungs it could, but you would see that the fact that they were inhaling or gulping at the dirt after they were buried. So that is something that can be found at autopsy.
2 unarmed, innocent mothers dead. We wait as justice unfolds, and now we stop to remember American hero, Agent Eliezer Ramos Velez, just 35, shot in the line of duty, leaving behind his beloved fiancée and infant son, Malcolm. American hero, Agent Eliezer Ramos Velez. I want to thank all of our guests for being with us tonight, but especially to you for being with us tonight and every night. Nancy Grace signing off. I'll see you tomorrow night, 6 and 9 o'clock sharp Eastern. And until then, good night.
Okay, let's do a search for.
Guys, thank you for watching Crime Online with Nancy Grace here.
Do a search for the 5th arrest. Let's see. I see something about a fifth suspect who was released, but that was 9 days ago. So let me do filter here. Okay, here we go.
We've got breaking news in the case of the two Kansas moms, Veronica Butler and Jillian Kelly, who were murdered while on their way to pick up Butler's two kids in a custody visit that turned deadly. We've been covering this one for weeks. Veronica had been in this nasty custody battle with the paternal grandmother of her children, Tiffany Adams, who was arrested on April 13th, along with 3 others. The group, known to call themselves as God's Misfits. Well, today, a 5th suspect in connection with the murders, this man you see right here, was also now arrested. 31-year-old. He's a father of 3. Paul Grice is his name. And we're told that he confessed to police yesterday that he was involved in the planning, the killing, and the burying of the moms. Also, I have some exclusive new information on how the women were murdered. I want to bring in News Nation national security contributor, retired FBI special agent, Tracy Wilder. Tracy, it's always good to see you. First thing I want to ask you, I thought it was interesting with Paul Grice, the 5th arrest now. Police are saying that he also went out and interviewed him yesterday and that he confessed to his involvement. Grandma Tiffany apparently also confessed. Why do you think they're all confessing? I mean, a lot of times you'd think they'd just stay silent.
So that's a great question, Brian. It's good to see you. I think a lot of this really goes back to that God's Misfit affiliation, and that has to do with being sovereign citizens. And they feel that what they did needed to be done and was necessary because they don't trust the government. They don't believe in the government. Therefore, they needed to intervene. I'm not saying that's right, but I think that's where their mind's at in regards to these confessions.
The other new information we're able to confirm now, Tracy, is that the 2 victims were not shot. We don't know the exact cause of death or how they died, but we did confirm through the medical examiner that they were not shot. What do you make of that? Because when I first heard that, it just, I don't know, my heart went out to, I'm just thinking, I think it might have been a very, very brutal killing. You're kind of hoping if they were shot, it was quick and painless.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And that was something that I talked about with Dan Abrams a week or 2 ago, kind of really discussing why it took so long, quite frankly, to identify their bodies. And I want to be sensitive about this, but there's rumors, I don't know if it's true or not, that there was a broken hammer at the scene. And if that is the case, then it sounds perhaps they were bludgeoned to death. And that takes time to really figure out identifications with dental records. And so that's what I felt all along, is that they were not shot. They were beaten in some way, which is absolutely horrific.
Yeah, and we've also reported that there were large puddles of blood at the scene where the car was discovered, and that there was also blood inside the car. So it's looking more and more like it was really just a brutal, brutal murder. I want to take you inside the mind of this new suspect, though, Paul Grice. And you mentioned God's Misfits, this anti-government religious cult group they were a part of. We managed to get our hands on a land record that Paul filed last summer. This was a public document, and I want to read you part of it, Tracy, because it gives you an idea of what he thought and believed and what kind of person he was. It says, I repudiate and revoke my citizenship, if any ever existed, with the legal fiction known as the United States government. I claim my children as my God-given property and subject to none other. Government did not create my children and therefore does not control my children. God created my children in their mother's womb with my sperm and are my creation, my property, and I waive none of my God-given rights or duties in the upbringing of my offspring. So this is something that this 5th suspect filed as part of a land record, but I guess this just goes back to the God's Misfits group. It kind of shows you what these folks were believing.
Right. And so what really the key where there's that legal fiction, that's how they view society. It exists not in real life. It is just simply a construct that was made by someone that they don't have to answer to. And that's really kind of what the sovereign citizens are about too, although I know it's kind of 2 separate groups that we're looking at here. And as a result, they have a tendency to take the law into their own hands. And I think in this case, they believed every step of the way that the legal system was taking these kids from them, and they needed to get these kids back because those kids We're their property and belong to them in this sort of world simulation.
Wow, just disturbing. You saw the 5 suspects now. There's now 5 suspects. I mentioned that Grandma Tiffany confessed early on in a recorded statement. Do you think that she's the mastermind from what we know behind this whole thing. Do you think she's trying to work a deal behind the scenes? Because the death penalty could be on the table to avoid the death penalty. Is she the reason that they figured out that Paul Grice had enough involvement to be arrested? Do you think she's talking to them right now behind the scenes?
Yes and no. So you have to remember, this is a group that doesn't like the government. So I actually am thinking that they're not being compliant with the government, quite frankly, because they don't trust them, they don't believe in them, and they don't think they have any power over them. So I would be, and I could be surprised, right, that she's just rolling over and admitting everything and turning suspects over. I think this came from the 16-year-old daughter, and they were trying to track him down. And my guess is it was difficult to track him down, and that's why this took a bit longer. But I'm not sure that any of them are flipping on each other yet, simply because of their mistrust of the government and the legal system.
Yeah, and I was out there, Tracy, talking to a number of people. Everybody knows everybody out there, and heard the same thing over and over again when it came to Grandma Tiffany and her boyfriend Tad, that people were intimidated by them, got a bad vibe many times. But in terms of Paul Grice, the 5th suspect, we heard a lot of really nice things, that he was a family man, that he was a hard worker, that they didn't really think he was involved. So the community seems to be really shocked by this, Tracy.
I mean, look, it's hard to sometimes know what someone's doing behind closed doors, right? And if this is someone that did share that core ideology, he may not have been an aggressive person. He may not have been a violent person. But when it comes to children, and again, he stated in that statement, they are his property and his property alone, they will do violent things.
Any chance you think that there could be more suspects involved? Because they said
In
it's
my
an open
opinion,
investigation, so.
You know, in my opinion, no. I don't know that there's going to be any suspects directly involved in the murders themselves, but there may be other kind of co-conspirators that may come out as a result of this. But I think the main murder suspects, those who participated in the deaths, are in custody now.
Hey, thank you for watching. Please go to newsnationnow.com, newsnationnow.com, and you can find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to...
Okay. Well, sovereign citizens, we know all about them. Oops. Let's see. Looks like we are back here.
All right, please. Freeze off, President County for Your Honor.
Thank you. Please be seated. Okay, we're back on the record on case CR 22211623, State of Idaho versus Chad Guy Daybell. Continuing with this. Is the state prepared to call another witness this afternoon?
We are, Your Honor.
Go ahead, Mr. Wixom.
Thank you. We would call Spencer Cook.
I swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you.
All right, now that the witness has been sworn, before we start with testimony, I'll just inquire, because the court has its exclusionary order. Mr. Cook, have you been viewing at all any of the testimony in this case on the court's live stream or otherwise in the trial since it started?
No,
All right, have you discussed with anyone else their testimony they've given in the case?
no.
Very well. With that, thank you for your confirmation of that. You can go ahead and inquire on direct, Mr. Wixom.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sir, will you please state and spell your first and last name for the record?
Spencer Cook, SpencerCook.
And Mr. Cook, what is it that you do for a living?
I'm the technology director at the Sugar Salem School District.
Is that the same school that Tammy Daybell worked at back in 2019?
It is.
What could you explain to the jury in your role at work, what is it that you do specifically?
As the technology director, I'm in charge of all of the technology throughout the district. So that includes all of the schools from kindergarten all the way up to 12th grade. And I'm in charge of the data, the anything that plugs into the wall, basically. So projectors, computers, network, security, cameras, email, communications, telephones.
Okay, thank you. And so you mentioned email. What do you have to do with respect to the email for the school?
Well, I maintain and manage the emails accounts for all of the employees and students of the district.
When you say manage the email accounts, what does that entail?
Well, we use Google apps for the email service, and so I maintain all of the accounts and make sure that users can log in and make sure they receive emails and send emails.
Do you also manage the email storage?
I do.
Could you explain to the jury what you do with the storage for the email system?
Sure. So we have the front-facing email Gmail account, and the users log in and out that's a completely separate setup that they use. And then I have a archiving server that maintains all email communications in and out from all accounts that we maintain. And that is only accessed by myself.
How long does the school keep emails?
We keep emails for 3 years.
And what about the users? Is there a school policy for how long a user might keep their email?
Users can keep their emails as long as they see fit. There's no limit to the amount of storage that they can keep. So if there's an email that they need that's important, then they're able to keep those emails.
Do you recall back in February of 2021 being contacted by law enforcement with respect to Tammy Daybell's email?
Yes, I do.
Do you recall what it was that they requested of you?
They were asking for emails that Tammy had received from anybody and anyone that would send an email to her email account. And they were looking for an email from Charles Vallow on a specific time frame. It was, I think, June 29th, 2019.
Were you able to retrieve that kind of an email?
Yeah, I was able to retrieve it from the archiving server.
Your Honor, at this time, the state has a proposed state's exhibit we've marked as 419, and I believe it's been stipulated that it can be entered. I can offer up 2 copies to the court.
All right, has the defense been able to review 419? Any objection to its admission? Yeah, we'll have you review that first. Okay, so exhibit 419 is admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. May I have permission to publish with the ELMO?
Yeah, I'll have the bailiff give you the exhibit for publishing.
believe I'm just waiting for the clerk, Your Honor.
Yeah, we're looking at that again. Is that showing on the jurors monitors? Okay, there we go. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cook, I'd like to call your attention to just the first paragraph of this exhibit. If you want to go, can you see it on your
I
screen?
see it on my screen, yes.
You mentioned an email that you retrieved in Tammy Daybell's email system,
Correct.
and the date again was what?
The June 29th of when the email was
Yes.
retrieved, yes.
Yeah, I'd like to call your attention to the first paragraph. If you will, go down to where there's a quote in there with the content of the email. Do you see the quote marks where it says Tammy, my name?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Will you just read the first two full sentences of that, please?
Sure. Tammy, my name is Charles Vallow. I have some vital and disturbing information regarding your husband and yes, yep. You bet. Tammy, my name is Charles Vallow. I have some vital and disturbing information regarding your husband and my wife, Lori. This is your work email, so I'll have to wait to send you the evidence. That is very disturbing.
And can you explain to the jury which email address was this sent to? What was Tammy's email?
Her email address was tdaybell@sugarsalem.com.
And what address did this come from?
It came from an email, charles.vallow@icloud.com.
In your work as the IT manager, can you explain to the jury, were you able to look into whether or not this email had been opened up?
Yeah, we, in the interview with law enforcement, we went into her account and we were able to find the email that was in her deleted folder. And it was Charles Value, the Charles Value at iCloud.com had been put into the blocked category inside of Google. So any email that Lori would have, or that Lori, sorry, any email that Charles would have sent would have been blocked, any future emails. So they would not have been received.
When you did your search of the email system, were there any other emails to or from Charles Vallow?
No, there were not.
No, I don't think I have any further questions.
All right, cross-examination. Okay, so there will be no cross of the witness. Mr. Cook, thank you for coming in and providing your testimony. Is he released from any subpoena from the state?
Yes, Your Honor.
From the defense? Okay, well, that will conclude your testimony in the trial. Thank you for appearing today. You can go ahead and step down and that will conclude your testimony. All right, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it's 3:00. I discussed scheduling with counsel. They've got another, well, depending on who they call next, it's an inconvenient time to start with a next witness potentially. There's been a request that we conclude for the day. Let me just confirm from the state, is that still how the state's requesting we proceed?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, and I know the defense is fine with that as well, so that is going to conclude our trial evidence for today. We'll start again with trial tomorrow. And while the jurors are here, counsel, perhaps we can just give them some indication. Is there some request with your scheduling that tomorrow being Friday that we stop sooner than the mid-afternoon?
have some witnesses coming in from out of town, so we're hoping to be able to get through them rather than hold them over the weekend. But I believe that would most likely
Just wanted to give you a heads up that tomorrow may not be a full day through the mid-afternoon. And so with that, we will conclude for the day today. And again, as we break for the day, I'll remind the jurors to please follow the court's continuing admonishment to not investigate the case in any way, try to avoid any media coverage of the case, and do not discuss the case amongst yourselves or with anyone else. You can only do that once deliberations have started. So thank you for continuing to follow that instruction each day. We'll be in recess until tomorrow.
All rise, please.
Okay, and that concludes for today. Whether or not it had been read or not, but it was blocked, whether that was by Tammy or Chad. I don't know. Yeah, I would want to know what somebody said if I don't know. I guess that's something we'll never know. Oops, something's not muted. Okay, well, we should resume tomorrow in the morning, 8:30. Oh, it was sent to both. Okay. Interesting. I don't know that they did, but I would expect that it's highly probable that he would have known how to get into Tammy's email. Do we have a holiday coming up this weekend? I've lost track. They do seem to like days off. Oh, they're taking Tuesday off next week, so a 4-day weekend would turn into a 5-day weekend. So, oops, something's still not muted. Okay, well, Tammy Daybell, Chad, yeah. That's interesting. I thought that Easter and Passover coincided, but maybe that's one of the things that got off when they reset the Julian calendar. I don't know. Anyway, tomorrow I will have to run off for a doctor appointment, so I won't be able to monitor things while I'm gone, but I really need to get in to see what they can do about this shoulder pain that I've been having. So I apologize in advance for that, and hopefully things will be going just fine. You'll have to keep me posted on what's happening. So until tomorrow, we'll bid you a good evening, and see you tomorrow in the morning. Bye-bye.